If you are listening to this late at night, take a slow breath. Let your shoulders fall. There is nowhere you need to be right now. Nothing you need to fix in this moment. Just stay here and listen. Most people think giving up is loud. They imagine it happens in a dramatic moment, a breakdown, a final decision. But quitting is usually quiet. It happens when no one is watching. It happens when the room is dark and the only voice you hear is your own. This is not a story about winning quickly. It is not about sudden breakthroughs. It is about the long stretch of time where nothing seems to move. The days that feel the same. The effort that leaves no visible mark. The work that no one notices. No one really prepares you for that part. At the beginning, motivation feels easy. You have reasons, you have energy, you have a clear image of who you want to become. But that phase does not last. It fades quietly. And what replaces it is not inspiration, but repetition. Repetition is not exciting. It does not give you validation. It does not ask how you feel. It simply waits for you to show up again, and again, and again. This is where most people stop. Not because they are weak, not because they lack talent, but because nothing is happening fast enough to prove that their effort matters. You wake up, you do the work, you go to sleep, and the next day looks exactly the same. Over time, doubt begins to speak. Not loudly, not aggressively, just enough to be convincing. Maybe this isn't working. Maybe this isn't for you. Maybe you waited too long. Maybe someone else is better suited for this life. Doubt doesn't rush you. It sits beside you, patient, calm, persistent. And if you are tired, if you are lonely, if you are already carrying more than you say out loud, that voice can sound like truth. This is the quiet years, the part no one posts about, the stretch of time before anything changes, when progress exists, but only internally. You begin to build discipline here, not the kind people talk about online, not the aesthetic version, the real kind. The kind that forms when no one checks on you, when no one claps, when no one even knows what you are trying to do. Discipline is not intensity. It is not force. It is consistency in low emotion. It is choosing to continue even when the feeling that started everything is gone. At some point, you realize something uncomfortable. No one is coming to save you. No one is going to arrive and make this easier. No one will notice the effort until long after it has shaped you. And that realization hurts, but it also simplifies things. When you stop waiting to be rescued, you start moving differently. You stop explaining yourself. You stop asking for permission. You stop needing people to understand. You work quietly. There is a loneliness in that, a real one. Because growth separates you long before it rewards you. You outgrow conversations. You outgrow environments. You outgrow people who only knew the earlier version of you. Not because they are bad, not because you are better, but because you are no longer the same. This is another place where people quit. They mistake loneliness for failure. They think something is wrong because the room feels emptier. But emptiness is often just space that hasn't been filled yet. When you keep going through this phase, something subtle begins to change. You stop needing external motivation. You stop waiting to feel ready. You begin to trust your ability to do the work regardless of mood. That trust is built slowly, through small promises kept to yourself, through showing up on days when no one would blame you for stopping. Self-trust does not come from confidence. It comes from evidence, quiet evidence, accumulated over time. Each repetition becomes a signal, not to the world, but to you. I said I would do this, and I did. That sentence, repeated enough times, changes how you see yourself. You are no longer someone who hopes. You become someone who follows through. There will still be nights like this, nights where the weight feels heavier, where progress feels invisible, where the future feels too far away to matter. Those nights do not mean you are failing. They mean you are still in it. Strength is not built in moments of certainty. It is built in moments of quiet resistance, when nothing pushes you forward except the decision not to stop. Most people never reach the part where the work starts to return something back, not because it doesn't exist, but because it asks for more patience than they were willing to give. Growth moves slowly, and it does not announce itself. One day, without realizing it, you handle pressure better. You react less. You stay steady where you used to panic. You don't celebrate it. You barely notice it, but it is there. This is how real change happens, silently, gradually, without permission. If you are tired right now, that does not mean you should stop. It means you have been carrying something seriously. Rest if you need to. Slow down if you must. But don't confuse rest with retreat. There is a difference. Quitting feels like relief at first, but it leaves a residue, a quiet regret that follows you into the next version of your life. Continuing feels heavy now, but it clears something inside you. It builds a kind of respect for yourself that no one else can give you. You don't need to be inspired tonight. You don't need clarity. You don't need answers. You only need to remain. Just long enough for the next repetition. Just long enough for the habit to deepen. Just long enough for the noise to fade. Stay with it, quietly, without drama, without announcement. This is not the end. This is the middle. And the middle is where most of the work is done.
If you're still here, that already says something about you. Most people leave early, not because they can't continue, but because staying feels uncomfortable. Discomfort is misunderstood. It's not always pain. Sometimes it's just the absence of reassurance. No feedback, no confirmation, no sign that you're moving in the right direction. The mind doesn't like that. It wants certainty. It wants proof. And when it doesn't get those things, it starts to negotiate. Just take a break. Just pause for a while. Just come back when it feels clearer. But clarity rarely comes first. Clarity usually follows action, taken without guarantees. This is where identity begins to change. Not suddenly, not dramatically, but slowly through repetition. You start to see yourself differently, not because you feel stronger, but because you've seen yourself endure. Endurance is quiet. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't posture. It simply stays. There's a moment, it doesn't feel important at the time, when you stop telling people what you're working on. Not out of secrecy, out of fatigue. Explaining takes energy. Defending takes energy. And you've learned that energy is limited, so you save it. You stop trying to be understood. You stop asking for validation. You let results, or the lack of them, be enough for now. This is when the work becomes more honest, when it's no longer about being seen, but about being solid. Most people never reach this stage. They're too busy performing progress, talking about growth, collecting advice, waiting for the right moment. You are learning something else, that the right moment is rarely comfortable and almost never obvious. There are nights when the loneliness feels sharper, when you realize how few people know the real version of you now,
how much of your inner life has gone unshared. That can hurt, but it also protects something. When fewer people have access to you, their opinions lose power. You begin to move quietly, decisively, without asking the room for permission. Silence becomes useful. In silence, you hear your own patterns, your excuses, your resistance, your strengths. You notice how often the urge to stop comes not from exhaustion, but from impatience. You want the work to matter now. You want proof that this time is not being wasted. You want reassurance that you're not falling behind. But growth doesn't operate on your schedule. It operates on consistency. Slowly, without realizing it, your tolerance for boredom increases, for repetition, for doing the same thing well, over and over again. This is not glamorous, but it is rare, and rarity compounds. You begin to understand something most people never do, that motivation is unreliable, but systems are steady. You don't wait to feel like it anymore. You've seen how feelings change, how quickly they disappear. Instead, you rely on structure, on routine, on the quiet agreement you've made with yourself. I will do this whether I feel inspired or not. That sentence carries weight. It builds character in ways no speech ever could. There will still be days when you fall short, when you miss a step, when discipline slips. Those days are not failures, they are part of the pattern. The difference now is that you return faster. You don't spiral, you don't dramatize, you don't turn one mistake into a reason to quit. You simply continue. Continuing is a skill, one that takes time to learn. At some point, you stop measuring progress emotionally. You stop asking, "Do I feel successful?" Instead, you ask, "Did I show up?" That question is simpler and more honest. Showing up is within your control. Outcomes are not. This shift removes a quiet pressure from your mind. You are no longer chasing a feeling. You are building a foundation. And foundations are invisible until something heavy is placed on top of them. When life applies pressure, and it will, you won't panic the way you used to, because you've trained in silence, without applause, without urgency. You've learned to stay. There's a calm that comes from that. Not happiness, not excitement. Stability. A sense that even if things don't work out immediately, you can handle the process. That confidence doesn't announce itself. It sits quietly behind your eyes, steady, unimpressed by noise. You become harder to shake, harder to distract, harder to pull back into old patterns. Not because you're aggressive about it, but because you're committed. Commitment is not loud. It doesn't need witnesses. It only needs time. If tonight feels heavy, if the road still feels long, that doesn't mean nothing is happening. It means you're in the part where strength is being built quietly. Stay here a little longer, not with urgency, not with force, just with patience. You don't need to rush the becoming. You are already in it, and that is enough for now. If you're still listening, then the night hasn't pushed you away. It's holding you quietly. By now, you've probably noticed something subtle. The urgency you once felt, it isn't as sharp, not because you've given up, but because you've settled into the process. There's a difference. Urgency demands results. Process demands presence, and presence is quieter. You no longer rush to escape the discomfort. You sit with it. You let it exist without turning it into a crisis. That alone is a form of strength. Most people are running from silence. They fill their lives with noise so they don't have to hear their own thoughts, so they don't have to face the gap between who they are and who they know they could become. You've stopped running, not because it's easy, but because avoidance became heavier than effort.
There are moments now when you realize how much you've changed, not in visible ways, but in how you respond. Things that once triggered panic now register as problems to be handled. Criticism that once cut deep now passes through without staying. You don't react the same way. You pause, you observe, you decide. That pause, that small space between impulse and action, that's growth. It didn't come from a breakthrough moment. It came from repetition, from choosing restraint when no one would have judged you for exploding, from choosing patience when quitting would have made sense. You've learned that strength is not intensity, it's control. There is a loneliness that comes with this kind of control because fewer people can relate to it. Fewer people understand the discipline of staying calm when chaos would be easier. You start to notice how reactive the world is, how quickly people speak, how quickly they decide, how quickly they abandon things that ask for time. You don't judge them, you just see it, and you move differently. You begin to value silence more than explanation, progress more than attention, depth more than speed. This changes your relationships. Some fade naturally, not from conflict, from mismatch. You're no longer available for constant distraction, for endless conversations that go nowhere, for environments that pull you backward. This can feel like loss, and it is, but it's also alignment. You can't build something quietly while constantly standing in loud rooms. At some point, you accept this without resentment. You stop trying to bring everyone with you. You stop feeling guilty for choosing your path. You realize that becoming who you need to be requires distance from who you used to be. That distance can feel cold at first, but it clears your mind. In that clarity, you start to hear a steadier voice, not the anxious one, not the doubtful one, the grounded one. The voice that says, keep going, not urgently, not emotionally, just matter-of-factly. You trust that voice now because it's been with you through the quiet work, through the days when motivation disappeared, through the nights when stopping felt tempting. Trust is built through survival, not success. And you've survived more than you admit. There will still be stretches where nothing seems to move, where effort feels disconnected from outcome. Those stretches don't end completely, but they don't control you anymore. You've learned how to exist inside uncertainty without needing to escape it. That's rare, and that rarity will matter later. When things finally do shift, and they will in some form, it won't feel explosive. It will feel natural, like something that was always being built, finally becoming visible. You won't rush to announce it. You won't need to prove anything, because the work already proved you to yourself. You'll move forward quietly, steadily, with less noise than you once imagined. That's how you'll know it's real. If tonight your body feels tired, let it rest.
If the night is still quiet around you, then nothing is asking for your attention right now. That's rare, and it's enough. There's a phase people don't talk about much. It comes after discipline, but before reward. After consistency, but before clarity. It's the phase where you are no longer struggling to start, but still unsure where all of this is leading. You keep going anyway, not out of excitement, out of commitment. This is where patience deepens, because you are no longer fueled by urgency or fear. You are fueled by habit, by identity. You do the work because this is who you are now, not because you expect something tomorrow, not because someone is watching. You've accepted something important, that much of life is built in advance, long before the visible moment arrives. What people call overnight success is usually the end of a very quiet story. A story filled with ordinary days, repetitive effort, and long stretches of doubt. You're living inside that story now. There are moments when you wonder if you've become too serious, too distant, too quiet. You notice how others seem lighter, less burdened, less concerned with direction, and sometimes you envy that. But you also notice something else. When pressure appears, they scatter. They look for escape, for distraction, for someone to blame. You don't. You stay. That difference matters more than it seems. Staying doesn't mean you enjoy the discomfort. It means you no longer let discomfort decide for you. This is where emotional control sharpens, not suppression, awareness. You feel frustration without acting on it. You feel doubt without obeying it. You feel tired without quitting. That balance takes time, and you've been practicing it longer than you realize. At some point, you stop asking, "How long will this take?" because the question itself becomes irrelevant. You understand that this is not a phase you pass through, it's a way of operating. You don't need constant novelty anymore. You don't need constant reassurance. You're comfortable building slowly. That comfort gives you an edge, not over others, but over your past self. You are less reactive, less impulsive, less controlled by temporary emotion. This doesn't make life easier, it makes you steadier inside it. There will be times when progress stalls, not because you're doing something wrong, but because growth isn't linear. You've learned not to panic in those moments, not to overhaul everything, not to abandon the path. You adjust and continue. That ability to adjust without collapsing is something only time can teach. You've also learned when to be silent, when to let things unfold without interference, when to stop overthinking outcomes. Silence used to feel empty. Now it feels intentional. You protect your energy more carefully. You choose rest without guilt. You choose effort without drama. There's a maturity in that, even if no one ever names it. You don't need to announce how hard you're working. You don't need to compare your struggle to anyone else's. You know what you're carrying. That knowledge grounds you. Some nights, like this one, you may still feel the weight of time. How much has passed? How much is still ahead? When that feeling comes, you don't fight it. You let it exist, and then you return to the next small action. That's how momentum survives long journeys. You've stopped expecting motivation to save you. You've seen how unreliable it is, how quickly it disappears. Instead, you rely on something quieter: commitment, structure, self-respect. Self-respect grows every time you keep a promise to yourself, even a small one, especially a small one. There may never be a moment where everything suddenly makes sense. No grand revelation, no perfect alignment, and that's okay. Most meaningful lives are built without certainty. They are shaped by direction, not guarantees. You are moving in a direction now, even if it doesn't feel dramatic, even if it feels slow. Direction compounds. Weeks turn into months, months into years, and one day, you realize you're no longer chasing stability, you're standing on it. That realization doesn't come with fireworks. It comes quietly, like a thought that passes through your mind and then stays. I can handle this. Not everything, not forever, but this. And that's enough. If your eyes are heavy now, let them rest. If your thoughts are slowing, let them drift. You don't need to stay alert to be strong. You don't need to push tonight. Strength is already being built in the background through everything you've continued to do. Tomorrow will come when it comes. You'll meet it the same way you always do. Quietly, steadily, without needing permission. For now, stay still. Let the silence hold you. You've earned that much.
The night keeps moving, even when nothing else does. Time passes whether you are watching it or not. And somehow, you are still here. That matters more than it sounds. There is a kind of strength that forms after you stop trying to prove anything, when ambition becomes quieter, when effort is no longer tied to applause. You're not chasing recognition anymore. You're building something internal, something that doesn't disappear when no one is looking. This is where identity settles. You no longer ask yourself every day whether this path is worth it. The question fades because the routine answers it for you. You do the work. You move forward. You rest. You return. There is comfort in that cycle. Not excitement, stability. Stability is underrated. It doesn't feel thrilling, but it holds you together when everything else feels uncertain. You start to notice how much energy you used to waste, overthinking, explaining, comparing. Now your thoughts are simpler, not shallow, just focused. What needs to be done, when it needs to be done, and then letting it go. This simplicity creates space, space to breathe, space to think clearly, space to recover. You no longer confuse busyness with progress. You're careful with your time, selective with your effort. That selectiveness makes your work heavier, more intentional, more precise. There are moments when the old habits try to return, the urge to rush, to skip steps, to look for shortcuts. You notice the urge, and you let it pass. Experience has taught you that shortcuts often lead back to the beginning, so you stay with the process, not because it's easy, but because it's honest. Honesty with yourself changes things. It removes excuses, but it also removes unnecessary pressure. You're no longer pretending this is effortless. You acknowledge the difficulty without letting it define you. This balance creates quiet confidence. You don't talk much about what you're building, not because you're hiding it, because you're protecting it. Some things grow better when they aren't constantly exposed. You've learned that not everyone needs access to your inner world. Not everyone needs to understand your direction. Understanding is optional. Consistency is not. There may be nights when doubt still visits. It doesn't knock loudly anymore. It just sits nearby. You don't panic when it arrives. You've learned that doubt doesn't require a response. It doesn't demand action. It's just a thought, and thoughts pass. What stays is what you repeat, and you have been repeating the right things for a long time now. This repetition has changed your relationship with time. You are less impatient, less reactive, more grounded in the present. You're no longer waiting for life to start. You're already inside it. That realization is subtle, but it brings peace. You understand now that becoming someone stronger doesn't require constant struggle. It requires persistence. Quiet persistence. There is a calm pride in that. Not arrogance, not entitlement, just respect for yourself. You've seen what it takes to keep going when no one is watching. You've lived inside the effort. You know its weight. That knowledge can't be taken from you. If tonight feels still, let it be still. Stillness is not stagnation. It's integration.
Your mind and body are catching up to the work you've been doing. Let them. You don't need to rush into the future. It's already moving towards you at its own pace. For now, stay here, in this moment where nothing is demanded, where you don't have to perform or decide. Just exist. The path will continue tomorrow. It always does. And so will you.
The world feels different when you stop fighting the quiet. When you stop treating stillness as something to escape. There was a time when silence made you restless, when it felt like wasted space. Now it feels like a place to stand. You've learned that not every moment needs to be filled. Not every thought needs an answer. Not every feeling needs to be acted on. That restraint has changed you. You move slower now, not in a careless way, in a deliberate one. You notice things you used to rush past, your own reactions, your breathing, the subtle shifts in your mood. Awareness like that was built through time alone, through hours where nothing distracted you from yourself. Most people avoid those hours. You stayed in them. And because of that, you know yourself better. Your limits, your patterns, your resilience. Resilience doesn't announce itself. It reveals itself when pressure arrives and you don't collapse. Pressure will come again. It always does. But now it won't feel unfamiliar. You've been practicing this state for a long time. There's a steadiness in your thinking now, less emotional swing, less urgency to react. You've learned that reacting quickly often feels powerful, but leads nowhere. Responding slowly feels restrained, but builds something lasting. That difference changes how you face problems. You don't dramatize them, you don't internalize them. You break them down. You take the next step. You move forward quietly. You no longer need chaos to feel alive. You don't need constant stimulation to feel engaged. There is depth in your focus now. Depth takes time to develop, and time is something you've given generously. This depth makes you patient with yourself. You don't expect perfection. You expect effort. And effort, you understand. You've learned that effort doesn't always feel meaningful in the moment it's given. Sometimes its value only appears much later. That understanding prevents panic. It keeps you grounded when results lag behind work. You've also learned when to stop pushing, when rest is necessary, when slowing down preserves more than speed ever could. Rest is no longer something you earn, it's something you schedule. That change alone has protected you from burning out. You are building something sustainable, not something impressive for a moment. Sustainability is quiet. It doesn't draw attention, but it lasts. There are fewer dramatic highs in your life now, but also fewer devastating lows. The range has narrowed, not because you're numb, because you're stable. That stability gives you room to think long-term, to plan without anxiety, to adjust without fear. You don't need to know every step ahead. You only need to trust that you'll handle what comes next, and you will, because you always have. This trust wasn't given to you, you earned it. Night after night, day after day, through repetition that no one saw. If your thoughts are slowing now, let them. If your body is heavy, let it rest. You don't have to hold yourself together tonight. You already did that work. Let go for a moment. The structure will still be there when you wake. The path doesn't disappear because you close your eyes. It waits. And when you return to it, you'll continue the same way you always do. Calm, focused, unshaken. That's who you are becoming.
The night has a way of slowing everything down, not by force, by permission. Nothing is chasing you right now, nothing is demanding answers. And in this space, you can feel how much you've been carrying. Not just work, not just responsibility, but expectation, your own. You've placed quiet standards on yourself to keep going, to not fall apart, to figure things out without making noise. Those standards didn't come from pressure alone. They came from experience, from knowing what happens when you don't hold the line. You've seen the cost of drifting, of letting days slip by without direction, and you chose something harder, structure. Not rigid, not punishing, just enough to keep you aligned when motivation disappears. You don't rely on willpower anymore. You rely on rhythm. Wake, work, rest, repeat. That rhythm steadies you. It removes unnecessary decisions. It conserves energy. Energy is something you respect now. You don't spend it carelessly. You don't give it to every distraction that asks for attention. You've learned that attention is one of the most valuable things you own. Where you place it shapes who you become, so you place it carefully. There are fewer impulses now, fewer emotional reactions. When something frustrates you, you let the feeling rise and fall. You don't chase it, you don't argue with it. You've learned that emotions pass whether you engage them or not. That understanding gives you space, and in that space, you choose better responses. You are not perfect at this, and you don't need to be. Progress has never required perfection, only return. Return to the work, return to the routine, return to yourself. You've gotten good at returning. There's a quiet humility in that. You don't assume you've mastered anything. You know how easily things can slip. So you stay attentive, not tense, just aware. Awareness keeps you grounded. It stops small problems from becoming larger ones. You no longer ignore the signs of exhaustion. You notice them early. You respond with rest, not avoidance. That's maturity. Maturity isn't about having answers. It's about knowing when to pause. There are fewer dramatic turning points in your life now, but there is direction. Direction doesn't need drama. It needs consistency. And you've given it that. If you think back to who you were at the beginning of this path, you might not recognize them fully. Not because they were weak, but because they hadn't been tested yet. You have, and you didn't break. That doesn't make you invincible. It makes you prepared. Prepared to face uncertainty. Prepared to work without praise. Prepared to move forward without constant reassurance. This preparation isn't loud. It doesn't draw attention. It simply holds. If your breathing is slower now, let it be. If your thoughts are softer, let them drift. You don't need to stay alert to stay strong. Strength doesn't leave when you rest. It settles deeper. Tomorrow will bring its own demands. You'll meet them when they arrive. You always do. For now, allow yourself to be here. Unobserved, unmeasured, just present. That's enough.
The night keeps unfolding on its own. You don't have to guide it. You don't have to hold it together. There is a moment, often unnoticed, when effort stops feeling like resistance and starts feeling like alignment. You don't wake up excited. You don't feel driven by urgency. You just move. This is where things become quiet inside. You are no longer trying to outrun anything. Not fear, not time, not your past. You're moving at a pace you can sustain.
sustainability changes everything. It removes desperation. It removes panic. It replaces them with steadiness. You've learned that doing a little every day outlasts bursts of intensity. This lesson didn't come from theory. It came from fatigue, from overreaching, from learning the cost of pushing too hard. Now your effort is measured, thoughtful, intentional. You don't need to drain yourself to feel worthy. Worth is no longer tied to how much you suffer. That shift alone has softened your inner voice. It used to be harsh, demanding, never satisfied. Now it's quieter, still honest, but less punishing. You speak to yourself with more patience. You understand that progress doesn't always look impressive. Sometimes it looks like showing up on an ordinary day and doing ordinary work well. Those days stack. They create a life that doesn't need constant rescue. You've stopped waiting for the perfect conditions. You work with what's available, with who you are right now. That adaptability makes you resilient. When plans change, you don't collapse, you adjust. Adjustment used to feel like failure. Now it feels like intelligence. You've learned that rigidity breaks, flexibility lasts. There is also a growing acceptance in you, not of mediocrity, of reality. You see things clearly now, what you can control, what you can't. This clarity saves energy. You don't fight imaginary battles anymore. You don't replay conversations endlessly. You let things land and move on. Peace comes from that. Not a loud peace, a practical one. The kind that allows you to sleep. The kind that steadies your hands. The kind that keeps your mind from spiraling. You still care, deeply, but you're no longer consumed. Caring without attachment is a difficult balance, and you're learning it slowly. There are nights when gratitude appears quietly, not for big wins, but for endurance. For the fact that you didn't quit when quitting would have been easy. That gratitude doesn't inflate you, it grounds you. You know how much effort went into becoming this version of yourself, and you respect it. Respect creates calm. If you're feeling heavy now, that's okay. Growth has weight. You don't need to lighten it tonight. You don't need to analyze it. Just let it be. The work you've done is already inside you. It doesn't disappear when you rest. Tomorrow will ask for you again, and you'll respond. Not rushed, not overwhelmed, just steady. For now, let the quiet continue. Let your thoughts slow. Let your body rest. Nothing is being lost in this pause. Everything that matters is already in place. The hours move gently now, not pushing, not pulling, just passing. And you're moving with them instead of against them. There was a time when waiting felt unbearable, when stillness felt like falling behind. Now waiting feels neutral, sometimes even necessary. You've learned that not every season is meant for acceleration. Some are meant for strengthening what already exists. Roots grow in silence. You don't see them working, but they are. You are like that now, less visible, more anchored. You don't need to announce progress. You don't measure yourself against someone else's timeline.
Comparison has lost its grip on you. Not completely, but enough. You understand how little context you ever had, how much of other people's stories you never see, how unfair it is to judge your inside against their outside. So you stop. You keep your focus narrow, intentional. What's in front of you, what you can influence, what matters now. That focus has reduced the noise in your mind. Fewer imagined futures, fewer regrets about the past, more presence. Presence is subtle. It doesn't announce itself, but it changes everything. You listen better. You respond slower. You notice when your body asks for rest instead of ignoring it. Ignoring yourself used to feel like discipline. Now it feels like neglect. So you treat yourself with a kind of firm care. You still expect effort. You still hold standards, but you don't punish yourself for being human. That balance makes you durable. There are fewer emotional extremes now, not because life is easier, because you're steadier. When disappointment shows up, you acknowledge it. You don't dramatize it. When success appears, you appreciate it. You don't cling to it. Everything passes. You've seen that enough times to believe it. This understanding brings humility, and humility keeps you grounded. You no longer need to be right all the time. You no longer need to win every exchange. You're more interested in alignment than in dominance. That shift makes you easier to live with, for others and for yourself. You've also become more selective about where you place your trust. Not cynical, just discerning. You know now that not every voice deserves your attention. Not every opinion requires a response. Silence is often the strongest reply. You choose your words carefully, and sometimes you choose none at all. That restraint saves energy, and energy, once conserved, can be used where it actually matters. If tonight your thoughts feel distant, that's okay. Distance can be restful. You don't need to resolve everything before sleep. Some things don't resolve through thinking. They resolve through time. And you've given time more respect than you used to. You trust it now. Not blindly, but realistically. You've seen what steady effort can do over long periods. You've lived it. So when uncertainty appears, you don't panic. You remind yourself quietly, I've handled worse than this. I can handle this too. And you move on. That inner reassurance doesn't feel dramatic. It feels settled. If your breathing is slow now, let it stay slow. If your body feels heavy, let it sink. You don't need to carry tomorrow into this moment. Tonight is enough. Rest here, unobserved, unjudged. You're allowed to pause without losing momentum. The path will still be there when you return. It always is.
The night is almost done now. Not rushing, not announcing itself, just easing forward. There's a calm that comes when you stop expecting closure, when you stop needing everything to end with certainty. You understand now that life doesn't resolve itself cleanly. It unfolds, it continues, and you continue with it. You don't need a final answer to justify the effort you've given. The effort was the point. It shaped you, even when nothing else changed. You are quieter inside than you used to be. Not empty, settled. Your thoughts don't crowd each other anymore. They come and they go.
You've learned that peace isn't the absence of problems, it's the absence of panic. You don't rush to define yourself anymore. You let your actions do that over time. Time has become an ally, not something to race, not something to fear. You've seen what happens when you stay long enough. Things align slowly, skills sharpen, confidence forms without noise. You don't need to look back often, but when you do, you can see the distance clearly, not measured in achievements, measured in stability. You are harder to knock off course now, not because you're rigid, because you're rooted. That rooting came from patience, from repetition, from staying when leaving felt easier. And that is something no one can take from you. There will still be challenges ahead, still uncertainty, still moments of doubt, but they won't feel unfamiliar. You've lived through the quiet work. You know what it takes to keep going without applause. That knowledge stays with you. If sleep is close now, let it come. You don't need to stay awake to protect what you've built. It's already part of you. Tomorrow will arrive the way it always does, and you'll meet it the way you always have. Calm, steady, present. No announcements, no pressure. Just another step on a path you never quit. And that is enough.